I'm Hew Strachan, and I'm Professor of International Relations at St Andrews University. Gallipoli is important because it's an alliance campaign. We've become used in 2015, particularly in Britain, or indeed in Australia, New Zealand, or indeed any of the participating countries in 1915, to think of war as inherently a coalition activity. It's not something we do independently.
But can you explain what you mean by a coalition activity?
Yeah, sure. Yeah, sure. That war is not something we engage in independently as sovereign states. I mean, of course we commit ourselves independently, but when we fight it, we're dependent on other powers to enable to fight it successfully or effectively. And that's absolutely true of 1915. This is a campaign fought by both sides with allies, and the success for both sides, or failure, depends on allies too. I mean, to take this from one side and then the other, if you look at it from the Entente side, if Russia had been able to give effective support to what is effectively a British and French landing coming from the south, then the story of the campaign could have been different. If you look at it from the Ottoman side, from the Turkish side, not only are these Ottoman forces under the command of a German general, but they're also crucially dependent on supplies coming from Germany and Austria-Hungary, their principal allies. These are Krupp guns being used in the fortifications. This is an army trained very largely and modelled on German lines. So there is, both sides are dependent on each other within their alliance groups to enable them to fight this campaign successfully.
So the Brits going to Gallipoli, would they have seen themselves as a British army, or how would they have seen the rest of the people who are amongst them? Tied up with them? Or?
It's true that British units are going in as integrated British units. You know, the 29th Division landing at Helles is a British division, and the French, who are landing as well on the 25th of April, are landing on the Asiatic shore, so they're landing separately. And the Australians and New Zealanders are landing further north. So it's entirely true that they see themselves fighting in a nationally determined component part, if you like. But they're not unaware of the proximity of their allies, and indeed the French are actually taken off the Asiatic shore and put on to the Gallipoli Peninsula after they've launched the dummy attack. So the French are evident. And indeed there are quite good accounts by French observers of what they think of the Australians, which I have to say is not much, and the Australians don't have much time for the French either. But so coalition relationships aren't necessarily made in heaven.
What do you think they thought they were fighting for? If there were all of these different countries and groups, they must have had some reason to hold.
Absolutely, and I think that in 1914, beginning of 1915, both sides have a clearer sense of what they're fighting for, actually in ideological terms. I mean, I do think that Britain, France, and France particularly have developed an idea that this is a war that has to be fought, and they see Germany at the heart of it. And they can very easily see the Ottoman Empire as the tool of Germany in this context. So they're not divorcing it from the wider war. They're not seeing Gallipoli as separate from the war against Germany, and nor is Germany seeing Gallipoli as separate from the war, say, on the Western Front. So they're united by that. From the Turkish point of view, of course, this is a war of national self-defense. I mean, this actually, in a way, creates a fresh and important Turkish identity at a point where the empire is beginning to fragment. This brings them together. And after the war, indeed later stages of the war, the Anatolian Turks will say that they were betrayed by Arab officers because they'll anticipate the breakup of the empire. But in 1915 itself, this is an Ottoman army that's standing pretty well square with the empire, with a sense of nationhood implicit in that, and with the need to defend it.
I mean, would you say it was true that somebody suggested to me that Gallipoli is the time when what was a European war can be seen as a world war. Would you agree with that idea?
I think there's a lot of truth in the idea that this is. I think that the war is a global war from the very beginning because there are imperial powers engaged in it. I mean, Britain and France and Russia, each of them are powers outside Europe as well as within Europe, and Britain in particular, lying at the heart of a global trading system, makes this a world war by its participation. But in addition to that, what the Ottoman Empire does is make that effective militarily, because Germany is interested in the Ottoman Empire as an ally because it will enable Germany to take the war outside Europe, which Germany wants to do. I mean, because this will distract Britain and France, especially from the Western Front. It could pull troops away. That's what they hope. It doesn't actually happen very effectively, but that's what they would hope would happen. And the declaration of holy war by the Turks, which in November 1914 they summoned the Muslim peoples to holy war, but they summoned only the Muslim peoples, of course, of the enemy countries, yes. And that has a big impact for Britain. You know, a big Muslim ruler, as it has some impact for France and Russia. But the declaration of holy war absolutely widens the war, takes it right outside Europe. I mean, Europe is still essentially a Christian continent in 1914. Africa, Central Asia are essentially Muslim, I mean, particularly North Africa and the immediately adjacent Central Asian states.